Right. So there's no ding like on Google. So we're live, and welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette. I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today I'm totally excited. I have Tom Howlett on the line.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Great. So I said your name correctly. And Tom, you're in the UK, and I can never pronounce the city that you're in. I see it.
It's Cheltenham.
It's
Cheltenham. Or
okay.
Cheltenham. Yeah.
I thought it was it says on your LinkedIn profile, I can't even say it, the Gloucester.
Gloucester. Yes, Gloucester. So it's in the county of Gloucestershire, and the town is Cheltenham. So yeah.
Okay. And before so there's something we're definitely going to talk about, which is the pair programming. I want to dive into that pretty quickly. But first I want to talk about your Anywhere office and talk about we can see, but maybe describe for us a little bit about your remote way of working and what do you need around you. Describe your Anywhere office.
Okay, so it's mostly a room in the house. It's a MacBook. It's a bunch of books behind. It's this headset, this trusty headset, which is really a bit broken, but I've had for years and that I'm kind of attached to. Occasionally,
I must say.
Yeah. It's really reliable and it never goes wrong and I don't want to lose it. But I often stick it in my kind of bag when I'm going out to work in other places, and then it gets I have to kind of glue it back together afterwards. So I really need a version that you can fold up. But yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and I'm mostly here, I guess. I've been in this office now for 5 years, I guess, and I'm often out and visiting people maybe a day a week. And then the rest of the time I'm kind of here pair programming with people in the UK generally. Okay.
So is your team then pretty? I read that you do your retrospectives face to face at a bar.
Okay, so I guess it's probably better to do a little bit of background. So I've worked with the same team at the same company, which was originally a London-based software house. I worked for them for 13 years. And I actually left and went freelance 4 months ago. And I still work with that team quite a bit now, but on a slightly more open basis, and then work with other clients as well, kind of doing similar things. But yes, that team, they get together every 2 weeks generally for a day, and mostly spent in the pub, to be honest. And yeah, it's mostly a socializing, and the retrospective is fairly informal these days. I mean, for years we did them. It's kind of an unusual scene because the whole team, 50% of that team is still together for over 10 years.
Wow, that's unheard of.
And I think a lot of that's got to do with working remotely now. So yeah, we sort of started together working in the office. Then everyone started having kids and said, "Oh, I can't live in London anymore." And the first guy was he was a really determined guy, and he said, "Look, I'm going to move to Dorset. I want to escape to the country, have chickens. I don't want to do this London thing anymore. And I'll do you a deal. I'm going to promise you I'll be just as effective working remotely as I am in this office today." And he went off and did it, and he made sure that he was as effective. He took the responsibility on himself. And if any of us were having kind of private conversations and not including him, he was like right on it in the stand-up the next day, which then became a virtual stand-up. And he was fantastic at getting the whole thing going with that team. And then when we saw it worked, slowly but surely the team started dispersing until they became 100% remote. And yeah, we worked out a way of doing that where we were definitely more collaborative than we ever were when we were sat together in an office in London.
It's interesting because so many people say that it's impossible, and of course I'm out to prove them wrong. And so I love
No. It's not going to fix a bad culture or a bad mindset, but if you've developed a good one and you're all motivated to do it, then I think it can be better. And obviously your life is better because you spend time with your family, not commuting into London, which is one of the really grim. And but I think you can work more effectively, especially as a programmer. I think there's a lot of things that suit programmers. That being at home, having a bit of space when you want to go and work something out, go and walk around the garden, take the dog for a walk, come back with your pair, and then kind of get that kind of collaboration as well. So I think you can't do that in an office.
Right. It seems like there's a lot of, with programming, it's a lot of brain work. It's a lot of it's in the head. So I would assume, I mean, I'm not a programmer, but I assume that having all that kind of noise and stuff happening around can be really distracting if you're.
Yeah. So it's very distracting, but then also you need the collaboration. You can't work as a programmer alone. This,
Right.
The stereotype of the programmer sat in the basement with his head down isn't the modern way of a programmer. It's a very collaborative and creative activity, and so you need that ability to collaborate as well. So I think this kind of remote collaboration suits that perfectly.
Well, let's dive then into the pair programming. And for people that aren't IT savvy, that may be watching or listening to this, can you describe what pair programming is, and then let's dive into how it works for you and why it's working so well.
Sure. So pair programming is when two programmers are working on the same piece of code, on the same problem, on the same screen, basically, at the same time. And it's one of those things that very few people do because it's so hard to sell to management. Management say, but you'll go twice as fast if you're independent. You'll go half as fast because two people working on the same thing. But actually, it turns out with the difficult thing like pair programming, where it's complex, you end up going, well, you go more than twice as fast. Plus, the quality is so much better. And there's a huge cognitive load on you programming. It's very complex. You're constantly battling with complexity. And when you've got two heads working on that at the same time, it becomes considerably easier and a lot less stressful. And you tend to make better choices, which lead to better software and lead to less maintenance problems in the future. And you just get through it more quickly. And you don't go off. I think maybe it's something to do with programmer personalities as well, that we tend to go off down rabbit holes and we can kind of get a bit obsessive about things. Whereas when you've got a pair there, he's there going, no, hold on, back off. Let's step back and take another look at this. Do we really want to go down that rabbit hole? So pair programming is fun. I mean, most people pair program do it side by side, but I think it actually works even better remotely.
And do you work with the same person all the time? Are you pairing with the same?
So I do at the moment, but when we were with this team, we would work with a pair, and we would typically work with a pair for a day or two, and then swap pairs around the team. So working with different pairs on the team. So everyone has a shared knowledge of the software. Nobody goes, oh, right, that piece, you're going to have to talk to Jim about that. Nobody else would touch that. You don't get that when you do this pair programming, because everybody's working with each other and everyone has some exposure to all of the code, which makes it much easier to maintain. I guess the thing about this software, this team, we stayed together for a long time, but we worked on the same piece of software for a long time. So writing bad quality software isn't an option when you've got to live with it for the next 5 years. Every poor line of code you write, you pay for years afterwards, every bad choice you make. So the team was hugely bought into making sure that everybody was doing a good job. And we were all kind of working together doing that, really. And there's pair programming, but also we'd spend quite a lot of time together as a team, 7 or 8 of us in the mornings at the stand-up, and then probably post-stand-up discussions about things to really make sure that everybody was understanding what was going on. Everyone was happy with what was being done with the software. So it was very much a shared ownership of that piece of software.
And were there people what happened when there was conflict and when somebody was unhappy? Did that happen very often?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I think we. Yeah. It used to be. Originally, when we started doing it, it was painful, and over the years, I think we got better at resolving the conflict. We spend more time listening. And one of the things about working remotely as a team is we weren't generally using video. So we would be looking at the same screen. We'd be looking at a virtual board or actually a piece of code and talking about a piece of code. So we're not generally looking at each other's faces, although we did do occasionally. So you can't see the same body language. And if someone isn't contributing to the conversation, you don't know why. You don't know if they're disinterested. You don't know if they're just fuming with anger and actually don't want to contribute because they don't want to make it worse, or they're disengaged or whatever. You can't see that kind of thing as easily. So I was a scrum master as well as a developer on the team, and we'd kind of go. People would sense this would happen, and people would say, "Let's just go round with everybody and have a quick round table with the team and go, how do you feel about this?" And Matt would go, I'm unhappy about this, or Jim would go, yeah, I'm fine, let's just move on. And you need to kind of, there's certain things I think with working with a team remotely that you need to do, just practices that you need to bring in that just ensure that everybody is kind of fully engaged all the time, really. Otherwise, people become disengaged and frustrated, and you don't know anything about it because you can't see their faces.
Right. I did a webinar last night, in fact, where I recommended people, when they're sharing the screen, you should use a tool that allows you to share your screen and see the video at the same time.
Yeah.
Like Google Hangouts, once you start sharing your screen, the videos go away. So you need that bandwidth, between the communication. So
it was interesting. We talked a lot about using video more, and we sort of occasionally did it, but it was almost like a novelty, and we kind of got used to not using it and working remotely without it. And I think people were kind of like, I'm happy without it. I don't really want to, it's an extra kind of, it's an investment. You're opening yourself up more, aren't you?
Sure.
And people were really comfortable working without it. So we kind of work around it in other ways, just making sure in the conversation that everybody is kind of on the same page.
It's interesting that people are so averse to the video. I mean, I understand that. I had the same in the beginning. I had the same when my collaboration partner first suggested that we do the video. I thought, I'm in my running clothes or whatever it is, whatever the reason is. And then slowly I found it so valuable that now I insist on it most of the time.
It's kind of funny because, I mean, with you, it's probably different. You're talking to new people and you want to see them, but we were working with the same people every day for years. So you kind of, in my mind, we all knew what each other looked like. We knew each other's mannerisms, and when you spoke to each other, you could imagine them. So that wasn't a big deal. The main time we turned video on was to like show something new in our office. We'd like share something. It's like, oh look, I've got a new kind of lamp or something like this. Right, that would be the main time you turn video on, or come and see the new baby that's joined the team. Somebody's had a baby or a new dog or stuff like that. It would be sharing new things that people hadn't seen before. But I think people would kind of just. We knew each other well enough to kind of imagine each other. So
interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting. And also, you say something with being able to show off, the new baby or the new toys that you get, which is also, I find that with remote working, that sometimes it can be more personal when we're working from home, because you would never get these kind of opportunities if everybody's in the office together. I mean, you'd never see the new dog. You might hear about it, or, so it can be more.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, it's those conversations that you'd have at work. You'd say, "Oh, I've got a new dog," but actually, you can go, "Here's the dog. Oh, he's come in, and it's really cute, and look what he's doing," kind of thing. And it kind of lines things up in a way that you can't really do in the office, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was interesting because most of the time people say, "Oh, when you're remote, you're so distant from your colleagues." And I thought, well, in some situations, you actually are closer in some ways. So what I'm curious about, though, is really the challenges. I mean, people are always talking to me about the pain that they have with remote working. So I'm really trying to dive in with teams and just see what were the things that you guys really struggled with when you first went remote. I mean, it sounds like you had one champion who was like, "I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be extra in touch and extra communication." And then slowly other people started to do it. What did you guys struggle with when that happened? Or what are you struggling with now even?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is when part of the team is remote.
Right.
And I think that's really difficult. And basically, as soon as one person on the team goes remote, everybody has to work as if they're remote in a way, if they're going to include him. You can't then just go off and scribble on a whiteboard and exclude that guy. That's really difficult. So that's a difficult transition. And that for us lasted, well, it's kind of steadily happened. A lot of people still went into the office. Even today, people still go into an office on that team, but they work remotely. They just stick their headset on. They may as well be at home. They just have a choice. They don't want to be at home, so it's fine. But initially that's difficult. And we fairly quickly established a protocol. If you want to have a group conversation, or if you want to have a conversation, you go into chat and you say, "I'm struggling with this. Does anyone want to talk about it?" And so everybody, there's immediately visibility into that conversation. And then people say, "Yeah, I'd love to join. I'm at home. Could we do it on a headset?" Other people will go, "No, I'd like to join. I'm actually in the office with you." And then you could go and do the whiteboard thing if you want, if that other person's happy. But you need to make that visible to everybody on the team and give everybody an open invite to joining that piece of collaboration. I think that's the first challenge, and people don't easily do that because it's kind of, it feels like a bit of effort. But actually typing into a chat, it's not a huge amount of effort, is it? And it soon becomes habitual. So just making those conversations open, I think, solves one of those really early problems. I mean, the other things really when we were starting off is tools, unreliable tools, taking a while to set up a screen share, things like that. And I think the technology now has moved on to the point where it's no longer a problem. And it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I've used various pieces of software. We ended up with Microsoft Link because it was a Microsoft shop, and it's fine. You know, we had a good provider, and I think there's so many good tools out there that that problem is hopefully over. But it's just getting in the habit of using them properly, making sure everyone's got decent bandwidth. I read a blog post about you saying going off into the mountains somewhere and struggling with bandwidth and things like that. And occasionally people would, go off somewhere and have poor bandwidth, and it's really frustrating because you just take for granted that you can talk to people really easily and not have to worry about those technical issues. So
yeah, and things just break down completely when the bandwidth is not good enough.
No, it's just frustrating because it sort of works sometimes and it doesn't work, and it'd be better if it just didn't work at all. It's kind of like that. You spend all that time trying to make it work, and then it's just more frustrating. So I think once you've got those frustrations out of the way, I think once you've got the collaboration right and those protocols kind of okay, I don't think it's hard at all. And I just want to, whether it's suitable for some people and not some people. I didn't really find anybody who really didn't like working in this way in the end.
Oh, interesting.
I think it is suitable. I think it's hard to not like it, really. I mean, if you've got the same level of collaboration, if you're seeing people or chatting to people, just like you are in an office, you've got that freedom. I don't see why it's much different, except you've got time at home with family and friends. I guess, I mean, some people like to be away from home during the daytime, but they ended up, as we were saying, working remotely in an office and just going through. They still wanted to go into an office, but they effectively worked as part of a remote team in that office. So they're still doing the same thing. But I'd certainly like to be at home. We moved to a beautiful place in England, and I go out for walks and see the family lots. And yeah, I prefer it.
Right. Yeah, I have like this little beautiful office. It's like a tree house, and I go running in the day. I mean, I just never go back. I could never go back. I tried actually a couple of years ago. I tried and failed horribly. I lasted 11 months, and I just couldn't take it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I was in a box. It's like
yeah. I quite like going and visiting clients just for the day now, but I wouldn't. There's no way I'd spend all week more than a couple of days with anyone. Away from the home office. Yeah.
So you mentioned tools that you're using Link, and you're right. What I hear, one of the issues that seems to come up is that there's so many tools now that people have a hard time knowing what to choose, which is funny because, but do you guys experiment with new things, or are you guys pretty much set with what you're using, your set of tools now?
We went through quite a few different ones and various combinations of things. I think we started off with Skype and Join Me. So Skype for the voice and video, and Join Me for sharing screens, which was good. We used at that time also GoToMeeting for group ones because those were kind of one-to-one, and that worked well. Then we went to Link. I mean, there's a whole new generation of tools now that, to be honest, I haven't really used much. I think you use Sakoko, is it, and things like that. I've kind of looked at. They look fantastic, but I've not played with them. Not large.
Right. If the tools are working for the team, then there's no need to go off and Yeah. How did you make sure then that everybody was able? I mean, was it a team decision to use the tools, or did people did team members introduce new tools, or how did you get everybody using it? Because I know that a lot of people struggle with, like, some guy wants to use HipChat, another one wants to use Slack, and nobody can agree on which chat tool. How did you guys come to sort of an agreement about what to do?
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly get discussed. We chat every day in the stand-up and the pre-stand-ups, the sort of thing. We did talk about that. And people would suggest new things, and a couple of people would go off and experiment with it, and then they'd come back and report, and then people would try it. But I mean, it was no point in using a tool that the whole team isn't using, so it would have to get team agreement to
and how big is the team approximately?
So I guess about 10 in total, of which 7 or 8 were developers. So yeah. So there's 4 pairs basically generally on that team.
Okay. Interesting. So So what are the tools then that you're using? Then there's Link, you said now, are in your chat system. I'm curious which chat system you guys use.
So we use Link for chat, which to be honest isn't a fantastic chat tool. But it's simple just having the one tool for everything. And you can have a group chat and you can have individual chats. And it's kind of nice that it integrates together. The fact that you can, I think one really important sort of scenario is you start something off on a group chat. You say, do you want to talk? And then you can quickly turn that into voice and share a screen without then having to go, okay, now I need to organize something. It needs to be a click away. Often on a one-to-one chat, you start chatting, oh, this is getting a bit tiresome. Somebody just hits the voice button, it turns into a voice conversation. And those transitions need to be smooth and seamless. And I think the problem with using different tools is they can be okay, but I think having a tool where that transition is seamless is really, really speeds things up. And things need to happen fast, as quickly as walking to somebody in an office, hopefully quicker. Being able to turn something into a voice conversation, share a screen. It just needs to happen. It mustn't interrupt the flow of work.
Right.
That's important.
And you said that you recently went freelance. So I'm assuming, so you work with the old team still, but then I'm assuming you also get new clients on board.
Yeah. So part of the idea of going freelance was to be able to start introducing this to other teams, kind of thing. I'm working with one team at the moment. That's actually in Cheltenham. So I actually go to them on site, and that's not remote work. But I'm kind of looking out for working with other teams who want to go remote or are remote and are struggling with it, to work with them as well. But I still love to code as a developer too. So I'm not. Originally, I was thinking I'll go full-time kind of coach, but I'm like, I still love to code. So the one team I've got at the moment, I go in and I coach, and then I go away, and during the week I go and build them dashboards with showing the data of the kind of what they're doing. And so next week I go in, this is what's happening in your company, this is why things aren't working, and they're like, right. And I'm building them sort of dashboards as well as kind of the combination. And the combination is fantastic, because they can. It's the visualization in Agile that I'm able to help them with as well. Beyond just a board, but actually showing them metrics. And they've got it's a creative agency, so they have a huge amount of different clients. It's really complex. I mean, I was thinking, I thought just one software project was complex, but suddenly you've got 30 clients and going at one time. It's way harder. So the visualization is more difficult.
Do you find that people do that very often, the visualization? Because I think it's key. I'm a huge data nut. I'm a metrics nut, and so I don't code. I just use whatever tools I can to visualize my own data. But I find that it's crucial when you're looking at the statistics.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. When I first had a meeting with them, they said, and we want metrics, and we want to see what's happening. And so it was brilliant. I was like, yes, you're the client for me. Let's go.
I will code that for you.
yeah, and I can build that for you. I mean, the tools that they used, we weren't quite getting. We were seeing the problem. I think there's a load of dashboarding tools now, and they're great. You can drag them, but they're kind of compromised. You're like you're visualizing the way the tool labels you to, but by coding it from natively and hitting their system's APIs, I can kind of combine the data much more easily and build a much kind of stronger visualizations. And we're sort of discussing those a lot. Or what if we could see this on top of that? But they're great. They're very mindful of making sure that every visualization, every piece of the dashboard is hugely valuable to them, and they'd act on them. And we have this kind of rule. I'm saying, well, how will you act on that? And if they won't act on it, we won't build it.
Smart.
So it's not just pretty dashboards. It's things that they're kind of that's changing the way they work. So,
and have you had any issues with finding clients that don't want to work remotely at all? I mean, are not open to it at all, or?
No, I mean, I work for one other client who are very traditional enterprise, and they have a huge office in a kind of business park and on about 150 miles away. And as a software developer, I kind of go into them for like a week, a day or two, and I spend some time with them, and then I go away and build the software. And if you looked at their policies, it would say no remote work, like this, and they won't give me access to anything remotely, but I can still kind of work around it. I build the software with fake data, so I don't need to access their systems, which is a good way to build the software anyway.
Right.
has kind of interfaces, and I stub stuff out, and I just go away and work remotely, and they chat to me on email. And it's kind of bizarre because although they've got this big office, they're not very collaborative. And they're far less collaborative than I normally am. And I almost feel like I'm actually hassling them because I'm like, oh, can we talk about this? And they're like, oh, yeah, we don't normally talk that much. You kind of, I write you a document and you go and do it. I'm like, no, this isn't the way I work. I'm more collaborative. And it's actually, even though I'm remote, I'm too collaborative for them. they're in an office, but they don't talk to each other and they don't collaborate in the same way. So it's kind of, yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I've seen that in offices as well. I mean, people are just in their silo, and after you've worked together for a long time, people have their routines and their ruts and patterns.
But that's kind of because you are forced to be together in a way, and you want that space.
Right.
When you're remote, you can take that space, but then you can come back and you want to talk to people. If you're stuck in the office and the people are around you all the time, you can't escape from them. Maybe you want to talk to them less.
Right.
So maybe actually being remote is encouraging you to be more collaborative, because otherwise you're just alone, aren't you?
I mean, you could be alone in the office. I've been in an office in my own little silo, dying to have meetings with people.
Yeah.
So lonely there. It's weird. Yeah. So you mentioned Agile, and I just have to bring this up because the more I talk with Agile coaches and Agile teams, the more and more it comes up that Agile and remote don't work together. And clearly that's not true because it has to work together. But so many people have told me you can't be Agile if you want to be remote. It's just not possible. And I think,
I think when people are talking about remote, they're talking about different things. We're both talking about remote collaboration, and that's why I started blogging about it. And I started just always calling it remote collaboration rather than just remote, because remote as a word, it sounds like you're not able to be collaborative, but the way we're working is more collaborative than most people sitting. I mean, even an agile team, it's no different. And the time with my old company, it was as good as agile setup as I'd ever heard of. We worked as an agile team there, but it was all remote, and it was hugely collaborative, always questioning, reflection, visualization. It's all possible. I think people just haven't seen it, and people have seen poor examples of remote work where people don't have the ability to do that. So I think agile can work great, and I think actually it's more in keeping with the sort of philosophy behind agile, where it's more about creativity, and it's more humane way of working. Being able to work at home is more humane than being stuck on a commuter train for 2 hours a day.
Right.
It's more about the people. It's respecting the people. It's allowing them to work where they want to work, but also allowing them to collaborate effectively with each other. So I think it's totally fits with agile for me. I think people who are saying that probably just haven't seen it work, and it takes effort to make it work, doesn't it? So
it's just a different way of moving, I think. So to me, Agile shows us how remote working should be done. You have the people over processes and the planning and if you're going to work remote, you should do it in the Agile way.
Exactly. It's not that Agile can't work with remote. It's that remote can't really work without the collaboration that comes with Agile. I mean, you don't have to call it Agile, but it's collaboration, isn't it?
Right. Right. Yeah. So have you found then there's also, management techniques, everything that we do when we're remote is slightly different than when we're in person. So I'm curious about any sort of management techniques, because the trust issue seems to come up all the time. How are people trusting each other? And I know that you've written a blog post about trust as well. I read this blog post. And what are the types of things that you do on your team? I mean, you guys have been working together for a long time, so maybe this is a hard question. You've got the trust because you know each other so well.
Yeah.
But for other teams, how would you go about building that or managing people in a way that builds trust?
So I think the pair programming is a huge contribution towards that trust, because when you're working together, you're completely open to each other, and your talents, but also your weaknesses are open to each other. We're working together. I have no idea how to do that. Oh, I can help you with that. I've done this before. Those are the kind of conversations that are happening, and you have to be open, and you have to be empathetic toward the other person, and it really builds relationships in a strong way. You just chatting to someone and you're doing something difficult together. These are things you're solving problems, you're having real challenges together. So I think the trust really comes through that. I think working individually, where I couldn't see what somebody else was doing, the trust would be difficult. Yeah. And I imagine a lot of teams would struggle with that. But when you're working so intensively together, it's kind of not really an issue. As far as sort of management went on the team, I mean, the team was largely self-organizing. We had a development manager. She was really a facilitator and helping us get the things we needed in that sense. And she certainly wasn't checking up. She kind of saw what was coming out of the team. And we chatted every day, chat every day as well in the stand-up. Although it wasn't really a stand-up format where we'd go, I did this yesterday and I'm going to do that today. But you would talk about that. You would go through the board and you'd see that what people were working on, how much, how well they were getting on, and people will be helping each other. So I think as long as you've got a way of having visibility and kind of able to spend a lot of time together, then I certainly understand more about what was going on in the team than I ever had in an office previously.
Right. Because you're really over communicating because you have to in some way.
Yeah. And also, I mean, chat is nice for that as well. I'm kind of intrigued by chat. I mean, we were quite anti-chat. We'd always jump to a voice conversation very quickly. So we'd use chat to say, I've got a problem with this, I'm doing this, but we wouldn't have long chats. I spoke to another developer recently who maybe you should talk to as well, actually. He's really interesting. But he works for a games company and they develop racing simulations. And it's a huge team of 60, 70 developers. They never talk to each other. They work completely on forums.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't get this. I don't know how you do this. This is incredible. And I sat and he showed me the forums. He went through the conversations and actually, it's good in a way because they can look back over the conversations. It's not synchronous. So one of the nice things I find about chat is it's a group conversation, and maybe someone's a bit dominant in the conversation. They kind of they really want to get their point across. You do that in a chat, and anybody can type in at any point. You can't. A strong personality can't dominate the conversation in the same way. It's much more free for everybody to say what they want to say or not say what they want to say. So I think actually chat's quite an interesting form of communication. Or, typing chat is an interesting form of communication as well. I think actually it's got some interesting advantages.
Yeah, I've heard. I like that the idea that somebody doesn't dominate the conversation, because that comes up actually quite often. Is if you're doing a remote retrospective, for example, then sometimes you have one or two people that completely take over, and anybody else that may not be feeling as strong, or maybe they're not as extroverted somehow, they don't get heard or they get bored in the conversation. So I mean that. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I mean that's going back to that thing I talked about earlier. Just go around the table as soon as you hear people you don't know whether they're engaged or not. Go around the table.
And just have everybody contribute something quickly.
Yeah. Just everyone say a word or two, just to get back into the conversation.
Yeah. The other thing I like about chat in particular, and this form of chat that I'm thinking about, is the institutional knowledge that we have. Then, the conversation is forever immortalized, which is sometimes bad, but I think it's mostly good. I would say that you know why decisions were made. You can go back and be like, that's what they were thinking, or.
Yeah, you don't have that. What did we decide? Oh, we have to have that conversation again now. It's like, although often those situations where you can't remember what you decided, it's actually worth going to have the conversation again because it was still unclear in your mind. But,
right. Yeah. I had a client, actually, we had a conversation a year ago, and I just went back for a meeting just this week, and they're still having the same conversation. And I feel like, how long have you guys been talking about this? It's horrible.
Just go and do it.
Right, just do it.
Actually, that's another thing on the management thing, and I don't know if this is really much to do with remote, but I'd often just shout, let's do an experiment. Always an experiment. Suggest people can't decide, let's do an experiment and talk about it again tomorrow. Somebody go off, give something a try. Just suggesting an experiment can end those conversations really quickly.
Are people open to that?
Yeah. I found, the team, especially programmers, because they don't want to be talking, they want to be coding. And so, much as they also want to have their voice heard and they want to try something, they really want to get away and type some code. So just say, let's do an experiment. Suggest a quick experiment. Talk about it again tomorrow with some kind of with some data. Back to the data thing.
So the thing that comes immediately to my mind when you say that, though, is, okay, we can do experiments, but at some point, it becomes like, at some point you've got a deadline, or at some point you only have so much budget, or I don't know if those things ever get in the way. I'm a huge fan of experiments. I just love the concept of like, okay, let's try it. But then what do you have to balance that, I suppose, with deadlines, budget, time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's the cost of the experiment? The experiment is hopefully very cheap compared to getting that decision wrong. What's the cost of going down this path that we're really not sure about? I think you weigh those two up. It's kind of the agile thing, isn't it? Fail early.
Right. So, fail fast. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, let's see. I've got, one thing, productivity and work-life balance. That's something I like to discuss because, people always say, when we're remote, we don't know if they're working. And what I find with remote workers is actually the total opposite is true, is most people struggle with always being on, not working enough. It's just not an issue, it seems. Yeah.
I do. But to be honest, I enjoy my work, and that's partly because it's remote work. And I tend to do, a few hours in the evening as well, that kind of thing. But it's kind of like a hobby as well. I feel like I've it's worked together. So I don't have this like 5:30 switch off. I'm thinking about it, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if you enjoy your work. If your work is hellish and stressful, then you need to switch off at 5 o'clock and you need to spend some time, away from that.
Probably looking for a new job.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But some people don't have that luxury, it's difficult. And you do need to just get away from it. But I love this work. And I sort of, I think about it in the evening, and then often my wife goes to bed and I'll stay up for a couple more hours and do some of the most enjoyable creative programming kind of stuff. I'm writing dashboards for this client and that kind of thing in these sort of early hours, and really enjoy that. So I kind of like the freedom to be able to do that and work when I want. But we do, with this team, works a fairly standard 9 till 5:30 kind of hours where everyone's together and everyone's chatting, so that you don't have that issue of where have they gone. And if somebody's going out to pick the kids up, they'll just put onto the chat, just popping out for 20 minutes to pick the kids up, and they go and do that. So that's a trust thing as well, isn't it? It's much better to give a certain level of accepted flexibility, but then people be quite open about it, so you're not kind of sneaking off to get the kids, you're just going onto the chat, I'm off to get the kids kind of thing.
It's more human. Like I have children and a life, and work is integrated. And
yeah. So I kind of quite like to blur the boundary a little bit. I think it's good.
And do you have any productivity things that you do for yourself that you think, do you have a routine or a...
To be honest, when I'm not pairing, I struggle with productivity unless I'm really passionate about what I'm doing. So I don't particularly have a routine. I do tend to sit down at my desk. I tend to, the morning, mostly, I'll take my daughter to school, walk the dog, which is fantastic. So I've got out of the house, and I think maybe that's an important thing. If you kind of move from your bed to breakfast straight to the desk, it's a bit like, so actually getting out of the house for half an hour or an hour of walking around is fantastic. So I do struggle a bit if I haven't done that. So I would suggest, or if not lunch hour, at lunchtime, I go for a walk up. Luckily, we live on the edge of Cheltenham, so I've got the hills just behind, so we can walk up into the hills, or mountain bike, or whatever at lunchtime, which is joyous. It's good.
It's funny because so many people in the office, there are facilities in many offices to allow us to go out for a run at lunch or go do something and come back and take a shower and continue to work. But I've never seen anybody do it.
No, yeah.
So rare. Like somebody might run in or bike in the morning, but never go in the middle of the day for, a jog or something. Yeah,
it's hard, isn't it? And I think it's part of the culture, though, isn't it? It's people don't really expect it, and you're freer to kind of you're freer to work the way you want to work when you're remote. You've not got kind of judging and that kind of office thing.
Yeah, there's like a peer pressure, I think, when you're around everybody. I mean, if you're gone for an extended period of time, like I love to go running in the middle of the day. It's just my thing. And sometimes, if you're going strong, I don't want to stop. I want to keep going so I can be out for 2 hours, at an extreme.
Yeah.
If you're really going strong, you want to keep going. And I think in an office, there's the pressure of if you're gone for 2 hours and then you have a 30-minute shower, and getting ready to get, that's like a significant portion of the day. And people really frown upon that.
Yeah. I mean, it's often in the offices, it's people are expected to, just be looking like they're working, where they may not be motivated, not actually be doing anything very effective at all. Whereas I think this way of working, it doesn't really matter when you're working, as long as you're available for collaboration, and you're just kind of, if you're enjoying it more, you're doing it because you love it, not because somebody's there watching you. So
right, it seems it's a different mode of working. It's people who really love what they do instead of just having a job. It seems to be there's a shift in the culture, and it's mostly the people who love what they do that are going remote because they love what they do and they want to integrate it more.
Yeah.
The job tends to be like, I need this job because I've got a mortgage, or it tends to be a frame of mind somehow.
I mean, it's traditional, isn't it? It's the culture that's been going for hundreds of years, and it's taken a while to change. But I see us working more effectively.
Do you think for remote working? Why are people resisting it so strongly?
I think they haven't seen it work effectively. I mean, often it's hierarchy getting in the way. I find it's hierarchy is usually getting in the way of change. People that used to do things and expect the new generation to do things in the same way. I mean, certainly in the more traditional companies. And then there's the whole level of trust, unless they're going remote as well, unless they can see and haven't seen the tools, I guess, I mean, change is always really hard, isn't it? Yeah, it's fine with small companies, with small teams where they're kind of young and kind of open-minded, but especially a larger company where people have done things a certain way for a long time, I think, those generations will kind of go and the new generations will replace it, I think. I don't think they'll really change.
Yeah, it seems to me, now with the ability for people to using sites like freelancer.com or Elance or Odesk, and where you can find work from anywhere. I think companies really are going to have to start worrying about, oh my God, if we don't offer something that makes this place a great place to work, our top talent is going to go off and find work that they want to do. I mean, because you can now. So.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that team, I said that after 10 years, 50% of the team was the same, partly because we'd gone remote and it was so hard. Nobody really wanted to work anywhere else. There were so few other teams that had that great way of working. I mean, it wasn't anything else. It was really down to that quality of the way you can work.
Do you do anything extra for the team building on your remote team? I mean, do you guys do virtual beers together, or do you get together often enough now? I guess you're not a team anymore, so.
Yeah, but yeah, we used to get together occasionally. And the other thing we do is the stand-up. I mean, I think they've moved to 9 now, but we did 9:30, and people would tend to join about 10 minutes earlier and have a social chat then. Which those 10 minutes were fantastic, and people would generally come into the stand-up early and then talk about what did you do last night, that kind of thing. So you'd have that 10-minute social time before the stand-up, which I think I've heard other people do with physical stand-ups as well. People will come in early and have a chat, but I think that in itself is, every single day, that's where the team building comes from.
I like that. So just like non-mandatory, hey, if you're around and you want to just chat with people, we're here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, show up at the 9 o'clock stand-up.
Yeah. People just sort of knew if they joined. Well, it's no trouble anyway. If you're doing, going through emails or whatever, stick your headset, join anyway. And then as people come on, you like morning, and it's more, it's more informal, and you can have a little chat about the latest Lego you've been building and stuff like that.
Right. The new toys we've got. I just got this new 3D webcam that I've been totally excited about. I've been showing people how it works, and it's just super fun. So yeah, I can totally understand. So I guess one final question, which would be, if people want to learn more about you and how to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Okay, so my website is leantomato.com.
Yeah.
There's also a blog which is really a history of 8 years of that time on that team, and going from being pre-agile, non-collaborative to very agile, very collaborative and remote, and that's called Diary of a Scrummaster. So that's got about 120 posts over 7 years of doing this. So yeah, if you want to sort of contact me or work with me now, leantomato.com. If you want to see the history of this team, Diary of a Scrummaster.
Sounds like that could even become a book, your journey of pre-agile to collaborative to remote to...
Yeah, I've written it, Lizette. It's written.
It's written.
Yeah.
Is this your Programmer's Guide to People book?
Yeah. That's pretty much what that is. Yeah. So originally I was working with a publisher, and that was going to get published, and then the publisher disappeared, and she lived on a boat in San Francisco, and that remote working, I don't know where she went. So it's never been published, but it's on LeanPub at the moment. So yeah, if you wanted to read that, Programmer's Guide to People on LeanPub. Okay,
that seems like a really good book for people to check out. I know I'll totally check that out, because I love the idea that the journey went from pre-agile to, I mean, it's really a whole, and you never knew. I mean, it's not like it was planned. It was just. Yeah.
And it happened, and the team did it. It wasn't nobody came down and said, "You're going agile." They kind of said, all the managers ever said was, we're not very effective, are we? And we went, no, let's do something about it. That's how let's start with an experiment. And we started. We broke off into a small team, tried a bit of Scrum. Yeah, that's really working. Let's do that with the whole team. We worked like that. And it just sort of happened from the team. It was great.
That's the best way. I mean, self-organizing. I mean, that's when that happens. It can be really magical.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Well, totally enjoyed speaking with you today. If there's anything else that I missed, then let me know.
No, I think we've pretty much covered
a list of all the different things I wanted to dive into. All right, and really appreciate it. So for everybody watching, until next time, be powerful.
Great. Cheers. Bye.